5 months ago, Stephen considered himself one of the luckiest people in the world. Sure, he had a lot of problems. He viewed himself as having everything he needed, good friends that were like a family to him, a roof over his head, 3 meals a day, and ways to entertain himself. He also had, most important of all to him, his girlfriend, Josie. He loved her and everything about her. He thought of her as the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen, and she was funny, kind, caring, intelligent, and talented. It had taken him long enough to tell her how he felt about her, longer than he should have, maybe, but he was scared. He'd completely expected her to reject him, and was afraid of ruining their friendship. However, when she finally pried it out of him, and he told her, he was surprised and elated to find out that not only did she accept it, but she felt the same way. A month later, they'd officially started dating, and after a while, started trying to figure out a way to be together more often, aside from just texting. After a short time, however, Stephen started having really weird dreams. This wasn't unusual for him, so it wouldn't be something he was concerned about normally. However, these particular dreams were recurring, which did worry him. He didn't know whether he was psychic or subconsciously really good at detecting patterns or what was going on, but his recurring dreams usually ended up coming true. The dreams he was having weren't happening every night, but they happened just often enough to genuinely worry him. Most of these dreams were about Josie breaking up with him, usually because she realized she was either better off without him or because she didn't love him anymore. These dreams concerned Stephen, but he brushed them off, as he figured he was just subconsciously scared of losing her, and those fears were manifesting themselves as nightmares. Besides, as he was hers, only hers, and hers forever, she said the same about being his. After their 3-month anniversary, however, Stephen noticed something. Josie wasn't able to talk as much. She seemed to be increasingly distant with him. This worried him quite a bit, but he didn't say anything for a while. He started to believe that maybe he'd upset her somehow, so he did his best to make sure that they were okay and that she wasn't upset with him. She said that she wasn't multiple times, and he did his best not to upset her by asking so much, despite his worries. It was around this time that he'd had 2 of the worst dreams he'd ever had. The first was a dream where they were living together in their dream house. He had to go out to the store for groceries, so he gave her a hug, kissed her, and promised he'd be back soon. When he got back, he called out that he was home, but he didn't get any response. Mildly concerned, he went into the kitchen to put the groceries away. What he found shattered him. Josie was lying on her back in a pool of her own blood, with a bloody kitchen knife beside her. Her arms had been slashed, and there was a note on the counter. With trembling hands, Stephen picked it up and read the note. Written in Josie's handwriting was the following: "I'm so sorry, Stephen. Please don't hate me. I couldn't do this anymore. I haven't been honest about my feelings. I haven't loved you the same way I used to in a long time. I couldn't bring myself to tell you, especially knowing how much you love me. This was the only way I could think of. I'm sorry." Stephen broke down crying, holding his dead love. He then awoke in a cold sweat, apparently having been crying in real life as well. In the second dream, Stephen was in a building. It looked like the one he'd lived in when he was 6, except a lot more shitty and run down. He'd been sitting in what appeared to be a living room chair at the front table. He was looking at his phone and had received a text from Josie. She had messaged him that she didn't want to be with him anymore, and that she was breaking up with him. He sent a text back saying, "Okay," and then got up. He walked into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of beer from the fridge, 6 cups, and what looked like a Colt Army Model 1860 revolver. He then made his way back to the living room and sat down again. He divided the beer into the 6 cups that he'd brought with him. From there, he'd drink the cup and put the revolver in his mouth and fire. After he did that, he'd repeat it. Finally, after the last drink, he put the gun in his mouth and fired. There was a loud bang as the gun shot its only round, and Stephen woke with a start. A few weeks later, Stephen got a text message that made his heart sink. Josie had sent a simple, "Can we talk?" Stephen knew that whatever she needed to talk about was serious, as their conversations rarely started with that sentence, and he had a feeling that he knew what it was about. His fears were proven true shortly thereafter, when she asked if they could just go back to being friends for a while. Stephen was really hurt, as she'd just recently said she had no plans to break up with him. But he agreed. Ever since that night, day after day, week after week, Stephen had started having a new recurring dream. An even worse dream. In this dream, Stephen was in an empty, infinite, pitch-black void. He started walking, trying to find a way out, when suddenly a voice would talk in his ear. "I told you she would break up with you," the voice would say. But it was Stephen's voice, but not his. It was distorted and reverberating in his skull, making his head pound. Stephen would start by running, desperately trying to escape the voice in the void, but the void would continue, and the voice would not stop talking. "Josie broke up with you because you don't deserve her. You never did, and you never will. She knows you're not worth shit, and she's not the only one either. Do you think any of your other friends give a rat's ass about you? I can tell you they don't. They'd be better off without you. You don't deserve them. You don't deserve anyone's love, care, or support. Nobody cares about you, and they never will, nor should they. You're going to die alone. No friends, no loved ones, not even any family that cared about you. How does that make you feel, Stephen?" On and on, the voice would taunt Stephen, mocking him and his fears and insecurities until he woke up. The nights he didn't have that dream, he'd dream of Josie and his relationship. Dreams where they weren't broken up, where they were happy together. Every morning, Stephen would wake up in a bad mood, either because of the bad dream or because the good dream made him feel like shit. One morning, Stephen had woken up to the same dream that he'd been having for weeks. He was in a bad mood, but didn't want to let it get worse, and was hoping it would be better. However, things would only get worse for him. The voice and the things it had said were stuck in his head, and he couldn't help but consider them for a while. He tried to put them out of his mind, however, it was mostly in vain. Things wouldn't get much better, as bad thing after bad thing kept happening. The cat ran away from the house. He fell down the stairs and twisted his ankle. His little brother knocked his computer off the table and shattered the screen, and on it went. It was 2:00 in the afternoon, and he was all alone when everything reached a head. He'd received a call. On the other end was the voice, the same one from his nightmares, once again taunting him. He hung up the phone and broke down. He began crying uncontrollably. Half an hour later, still crying, he grabbed his pocket knife and headed outside. There, he continued crying as he, with a loud, squishy, tearing sound, slowly and deeply cut his arm from wrist to shoulder, then repeated with his other arm. He continued to sob as he bled out, head lowered and blood pouring and pooling around him, and I grinned. I'd been watching him for months now, as I knew a doomed soul when I saw it. Soon, his soul would leave his body, and I'd harvest it before it could manifest its new form or dissipate into the cycle of reincarnation, like I'd done thousands of times before. My smile quickly faded, however, as I noticed something. The boy had stopped crying and had begun to laugh. His laughter grew louder, and his voice started to distort as he continued to laugh and laugh, slowly raising his head. Once it was fully raised, my blood ran cold at what I saw. Stephen's eyes, once a grayish blue color, were now glowing a bright yellow, and he had a giant grin on his face, much bigger than his face should have been capable of making. The aura he was giving off was unlike any I'd ever felt. It wasn't a mortal aura. It wasn't demonic. And it wasn't holy. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was the most powerful and overwhelming aura I'd ever felt. I fled as he continued to laugh. I know not what has been unleashed that day, but I fear that whatever it is, it's not good news for anything in existence.